Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. We have the pleasure of having one of our partners with us, Continia, and Mark and Chris are going to be discussing Innovate or Fail, why finance leaders must act now. And as a reminder, as I mentioned, we are recording this webinar and we will post it to our on-demand webinar library for you to review again or share with anyone. And you can find our library under our resources tab on our website at inovia.com. We do encourage you to ask questions during our presentation, so please feel free to type them into the questions box and we will get them answered at the end of our session. And I'm going to turn it over to Mark to start us off with our presentation.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much, Angie. As always, the glue that keeps everything held together for sure. Hello, everybody. Welcome to what I hope is an entertaining, somewhat insightful, somewhat exciting walkthrough today. I know we've got an hour with you today, and I sincerely appreciate you carving out time on your schedule to spend that much time with us. We have an awful lot to go through, actually. So we're going to go ahead and jump in. I am trying to advance my slides, and that doesn't work, so we'll do it this way. There we go. So I am Mark Rhodes with our North American team. Also with us today is Chris DeVisser. Hey, Chris.
Hello, everybody.
And Chris has graciously agreed to do a quick demo towards the latter part of our time together today and add some color commentary as we're going in. And Chris, if you want to keep an eye on the chat for questions, I'd appreciate that too. Thank you.
Certainly, yeah, of course. Any questions, put them in chat and I'll try to answer them as much as possible.
And I don't know, for a Tuesday, don't make them too hard. So Chris and I are actually going to be at InnovaCon in just a couple weeks. I am super thrilled because it's the first conference I get to drive to. I live in Colorado, so it's just an hour down to the tech center for the conference in a couple Fridays. And so I hope to see you there as well. We are sponsors of the event and we'll have some neat little giveaways as well. I'm not going to reveal what it is yet, but please stop on by our table and pick one of those up because I don't want to bring them home. That actually could bring some home, but you'll see when you get there. Anyway, let's go ahead and dive in. And what is financial transformation and how does it impact you and why do you care? It's an awfully big topic. And so for us to even scratch the surface in just a few minutes is a little difficult. You probably have heard quite a bit around financial transformation, business transformation, the increasing speed of technology and its impact on operations and our businesses as a whole, and certainly artificial intelligence and Copilot, and the list goes on, right? It's just flooded nowadays. And so we're not really going to do a recap of all of that per se. What we're really going to talk about today is more about just kind of the impact with your team, and then also just hope to be really an impetus or a call to action for you. And so what that really comes down to, or if there's one theme for today, it's change. And when we're talking about change, we're talking about discomfort, we're talking about potential, we're talking about risk, we're talking about a lot of impacts, right? And so I don't think this has been any more to the forefront or more of a concern than ever. It's amazing to me. My career going back decades, right? I started out principally focused as a organizational change guy, and we're still dealing with many of the same topics today because we're still talking about teams and people. And so when we're talking about financial transformation, we're talking about change and the impact on your finance and accounting teams. I'll use those terms interchangeably. Well, it's quite interesting, right? The finance teams traditionally haven't been about a whole lot of change, and you didn't want them to be about a whole lot of change. You didn't want them to be big risk takers and embracing new ideas and cutting edge technology. And so it's a very interesting dichotomy that's evolved over the past couple years with this whole concept of adapting technology and transformation, and really kind of butting up against the traditional role and model for the accounting team. So a lot to unpack with this. But we'll go ahead and dive in, try to again inspire a little bit of call to action, and maybe give you some encouragement as we're moving through. So with that theme of change, well, everybody knows change is inevitable. I love this quote. If you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance a lot less. This really puts it on ahead, doesn't it? And we'll come back to this theme in just a second. I also wanted to share really my favorite quote about change. Nothing ever changes unless there's some pain. And Roland Orzabal, does anybody know who that is? If you have a guess, throw it in the chat there. And then Chris, you let me know if anybody hazards a guess, and we'll come back and answer that question. I want to see if there's any 80s music fans out there, perhaps. So let's get to this question. What is financial transformation? Really, it's pinned to, it's really supportive of and part of business transformation. And so I want to put out a couple foundational points, themes that business transformation is not an option. I think everybody agrees with that. And the rate of transformation is accelerating. And you don't have to look very far to see this, right? I started going back and thinking about, businesses and transformation and, just kind of history there. You don't have to go very far to think of a lot of businesses that fall into a couple different categories, right? Businesses that stopped innovating, basically, right? They thought they had the model and they stopped, and look where they are today. It's really interesting. Blockbuster being the seminal case for this, right? They didn't embrace digital formats, and there we go. They went from probably the world's fastest growing company to basically non-existent. I do think they're still alive somehow. They own some rights for something, but anyway, pretty interesting when you start thinking about that, how fast this can happen if you take your eye off the ball. And then you start thinking about, okay, from an innovation standpoint, businesses that started just in the past 15 years, these are household names now, right? Came out of nowhere, embraced new technology, and look how prevalent these businesses are. It's really fascinating when you start thinking about from a daily basis. It doesn't seem to change that much, but it starts adding up very quickly. And then just to provide a little encouragement, businesses that did continue innovating, some stalwarts, right? Some ones that go back 100 years even. And they've continued to adapt and grow and are very successful in doing so. Lego, personal Lego fan, my son's a Lego nut, and you think about how they just were very, very consistent for years and years, and then just kind of exploded when they really innovated and adapted, basically. So a lot of examples out there to draw on. Hopefully that's a little bit of inspiration. And so we can come back and talk about, okay, financial transformation. What is that in particular? A couple quotes for you. The first one I pulled because even though it's pretty long, guess what? It highlights the classic triad. Financial transformation, combination of processes, systems, organizational change. In the 90s, it was known as people, process, and technology, right? But that's a classic triangle. And I want you all to think about that and remember that as you think about moving forward. How are you going to work with your team on this and embracing transformation? Because all three of those elements have to be in play. It's just a classic recipe, like a roux. There's only one way to start a roux, and this is the way to start that transformation. The second one, I obviously shorter, a little bit more on point. Strategic initiatives aimed at re-envisioning the finance function in line with the overall company strategy. I think that's just a fantastic explanation. Really does point to the finance team's ability to work on behalf of the company and drive the company, and certainly support the overall business transformation. So said another way, It's redefining the finance team's role to drive the business forward. That's really what it comes down to. And what I hope that's a really exciting kind of thought statement for the finance leaders on the call, because you have unprecedented opportunity and really trying to think how to put this where it doesn't sound like restrictive, but again, finance teams in the past, you didn't want them innovating, and now there's a new role and a new opportunity that they can really really branch out and do some fun and exciting things. And so with that, I want to drive down into a little bit of detail, but another little fun point for everybody. And Chris, did we have any guesses to who Roland Orzabal is?
Not many so far. I did see a couple people like changing screens potentially from the stats, so maybe they're Googling and getting back to us later. The prize is not big enough yet, I guess.
That's fine. It's yes, that's true. We didn't actually offer any prizes. He is one of the founders of Tears for Fears. There you go. Who their latest album is absolutely fantastic. Came out 2 years ago, I think it was. So they've continued to transform as well. So next little fun point is, does anybody know the original financial transformation? This is not really a new concept. This actually goes back a few centuries, and so double entry accounting, interestingly enough, it's often attributed to Luca. Looks like a fun guy, I think. But it actually predates him. Some put it in Italy in the 1300s. Some put it in the Middle East before that. So he was the one that actually documented double entry accounting. So next time you are at Trivial Pursuit with the accounting category, you'll be prepared for that question. Okay. So we talked about transformation. Then the question is, well, why finance? And I really kind of hinted at this already, right? I love this quote because it really does show the unique position that the accounting team is in to take advantage of all the new technology and these concepts. It sits at the confluence of the most important data of the firm, right? And that's a really important point. Has the best visibility, and if you've been working in finance a while, you already know this, but I think the rest of the organization is starting to wake up to this idea and the opportunity that's related to that. So drill down into this a little bit more, right? Why finance? Again, this major shift should be happening, can be happening, right? It's interesting to talk about. This is not going to happen overnight. And the reason being is there's a lot of change involved here and a lot of impact on your team, right? And again, this is not what you hired folks for originally. I wonder how many finance teams have hired people that are very change oriented recently, or really embracing new technology, or AI experts, or any of these things, right? There's a huge shift happening here, and we'll get to some concrete actions to take advantage of that. But again, if you think about the finance team being at the center of the organization with the best purview overall, and being able to bring all that data together, they do have the opportunity to take advantage of that and shift to where really pushing the organization rather than reacting and reporting on the organization. Okay. With that background, then the question is, of course, why now, right? We talked about technology, but you all know there's no shortage of new pressures and increasing pressures that are happening. So certainly over the past few years with COVID, that was a big shift in terms of remote work, and almost every organization was not prepared for that and didn't have that kind of process or capability, right? That was a huge impact. Certainly, as the generational shift happens and we're getting younger and younger workers in place, they operate very differently, have very different perspectives as well. You all know there's huge shortages out there in terms of resources and being able to hire, increasing opportunities with fraud, cybersecurity, and technology in general, et cetera. And then you've got these new elements. We have listed here ESG planning, reporting, and compliance. If you haven't heard or not familiar with ESG, you're soon going to be very familiar with that new acronym. Environmental, social, governance, right? The EU has already passed a number of regulations relative to companies reporting carbon accounting and their carbon footprint. The largest organizations in Europe this year, if you're not familiar with this year already have to start reporting this, and that's going to trickle down to smaller companies. If you have companies in Europe, they may start asking you for this information. And it's, I think, just a matter of time until we see some impacts here in North America as well. Chris, you've been following that topic very closely. Any comments to add to that particular point?
No, yeah, I think you kind of mentioned it, but if you have activities or clients in Europe and they have a bigger size, they may come to you and ask you for input so that they can submit the data. It is the idea that it basically becomes another form of accounting that you'll get audited on an annual basis, and you have to track activities on. We are following this closely and bringing improvements to our solutions to feed into that, and also our base product will provide some sustainability features.
I heard it called 21st century accounting the other day, to give you an idea of how big this is going to be and what a different angle it is to traditional roles and reporting. So, and then
maybe to add
Yeah.
to add to that, because I think like it always starts kind of as bureaucracy laws that are put in place and companies that have to comply, and it's costing extra money and people to comply. But I personally see a major opportunity here for the Western world, because all of a sudden a price is put on how you produce goods and where they come from. So these are things that ultimately get factored into prices of what consumers will pay for goods and services, and it will become economically more interesting to produce nearby and to do that in a more environmental conscious way. So I think it could provide a more level playing field for all us in the Western world compared to countries where they're not as advanced. They haven't invested in some of these topics. So I think it is actually an opportunity for the Western world to do more business.
And if you all have adult millennial kids, you'll know how important some of this is to their buying decisions. I do, and I see it firsthand, and it's fascinating. And actually, I'm really impressed by it. They're not just kind of blindly going into the marketplace and not thinking about their purchases. It's pretty impressive. Anyway, I also included in here when you go on LinkedIn and you look at impact on finance jobs by AI, just to take one particular cut, right? Number one list is accounting clerks and bookkeepers. And that's not to say, and don't immediately jump to, well, we're not going to need them anymore, or they're going to all lose their jobs or anything like that, but they are going to be impacted. And so my point there being, and the reason I wanted to call this out specifically, your accounting teams know that technology is more of a pressure, more of a threat now than ever. It's been this way for a while, but believe me, they see headlines, they hear about these things, and it really is a good time to work with the team on how you're going to embrace this and use it to your advantage rather than just let it be a threat. Let's talk about what you do about this, some actions. How do you move forward with this? For me, again, being almost a lifelong change management guy, I believe thoroughly in the power of the team and equipping them to be their best selves. And so with everything going on, all these pressures and the opportunities that are there, the team is the one that can make this happen. And so if you foster a culture that supports innovation and creativity and the ability to improve and learn from the mistakes and really celebrate the successes and continue to grow, I think it can be an extremely powerful asset and advantage for your business. So I laid out basically a 3-point plan, something to get your arms around, or at least to give you some action items to start with. I think that's the most important thing, is not to be too overwhelmed by everything, but just start trying things, working with the team, etc. And we'll step through this, but educate yourselves, equip your team, and experiment. Let's touch on each of these. And I'm especially, of course, going to dive into the change management aspects for this. Sorry, but for educating, number one on the list. These are not ordered, but I did put talk to Innovate as the number one thing there under educate for a reason. Innovate is your business partner that has a greater view on the impact of technology, and in particular, all of the advancements that Microsoft is making and how these components fit together and how they can support and you can leverage them for your organization, for your business processes. So ask Innovate and sit down, talk with them, ask them open questions about the impact of AI and what are the other tools that are out there that can help our operations continue to be a leader in our space. They have such great purview. They're in constant conversations with Microsoft. So they see such a wide range of businesses, right? The team talks internally. There's a lot of staying on the leading edge that they have to do and can do for you. So talk to them, have them share. And then just get educated elsewise as well. And how you particularly do this, of course, up to you, but start reading, start watching some demos, start diving in. Get a little bit better up to speed, right, on what all this new technology is. What is ESG compliance? What is AI? All these things. Equip your team. We'll dive into this very particular, so I'll skip through that right now. And then experiment. And I can't stress this enough. Try things. No harm in trying. The only way you're going to learn and really figure out what makes sense for our organization and our team is to try. And of course, you're going to fail. And as you all know, that's part of the learning process. And so learn from those experiments and continue to try things. Let's dive into the equipped and equipping your team for change. I have this 7-component model as a means of breaking down how to work with your team, how to assess where your team's at, and how to evolve your team, right? To make this transformational shift from if you remember a few slides ago, from being reactive and controlling to being proactive and driving the business and embracing innovation, right? That's a fundamental shift we talked about. And so I want to give you a framework for kind of working through with your team about how to make that shift and adapt to this kind of new perspective. So we'll step through each one of these. I'm not going to read each one, but just give you a flavor. And then Angie will share out the slides so you can digest this and really put together your own kind of game plan for talking to your team. First point, always, you have to have a clear business case. The team is not going to do anything without knowing why. You can tell them what to do, but you're never going to get that true buy-in, as you know. You got to give them the whys and the what fors and get people committed and understanding that central goal. What are we trying to do here? Yeah, we want to innovate. Why? Right? In what ways do we want to innovate? Right? How do we want to move forward? And there's a lot of components related to this, but got to get everybody on the same page as to what we're trying to accomplish. So that's first, foremost, always. Very closely tied to that, of course, again, as you know, executive commitment. Everybody's seen this in some point in their career, right? When management hasn't walked the talk, and you all know what this looks like. And you all know how critical it is, right? The management has to back up. If they're saying, boy, we've got to innovate and we need to be more creative and we're going to embrace technology and so forth, well, they got to follow through on those statements and make sure the commitment is there. Not as all simple as that, right? It's easy to fall down on this. It takes a lot of pieces to make that overall drive work, but it's so very important because the team will see it right away. Team engagement, very related to the business case, of course, right? And you know, when the team is engaged, if you're talking about we want to try new things, figure out new processes, improve what we're doing, spend less time on non-value added activities, all these things. If the team's not committed, they think, it's the latest wave. We've seen this before, right? You know what that looks like as well. And so they have to be committed and they have to feel like having that commitment is not risky, but it's going to be rewarded in some way, right? It's going to be profitable and productive for them. Supportive culture. Again, you all know what this looks like, right? If the organization does one thing, but you want your team to do another, that mismatch is going to be a rub. And it's always going to be hard to get things accomplished. You want to make sure that the team feels like they're going to be supported if they're trying new things. If they're trying new things and then they get yelled at by another department in your organization, right? How's that going to go? And of course, history comes into play, right? If, again, done this before and it's always fallen through because of, management's commitment isn't there or they've gotten yelled at or something like that, well, you've got that deficit to overcome immediately. Organizational design alignment. This is a tricky part. It's a little bit more scientific, but really it's making sure that the framework, the formal structure and the informal structures that make up your team and the processes and everything else are properly synced up, right? So are you asking the right people to do the right things? Are they compensated correctly in that capacity, right? Does the role agree with these things? A lot of components around all of that, but they have to be in sync because if they're not, your team will feel it, right? And they're in a look. This change is hard enough. You don't need to put up additional barriers to that, of course. Competency and capacity, pretty straightforward here. Do they have the right skills? Do they have enough time, right? If you're asking them to be creative and figure out new processes, et cetera, I just keep going back to, those kind of general statements, but they're already working so much overtime and they're under terrible pressure, right? How's that going to go? You need space to change. You need space to be creative, to innovate, to try new things. And so, and of course, you need those skills as well. And so don't overlook those vital components to make sure people feel comfortable and have the time to make those kind of transitions. And the last component, reinforcement systems. And so again, don't just say, hey, start innovating and start coming up with new processes or what have you, and then not talk about it. We've got to learn from the mistakes. We got to celebrate the wins. The team's got to feel like we're making progress. And you got to recognize that and celebrate that, and certainly not put down when mistakes are made, because that's just going to be part of the process. There's two particular tools. When I do a longer version of this, I have a tool for each of those components to kind of help you with the assessments and with the planning. But let me share just two top ones with you right now. One is called the state of awareness model, and incredibly simple, right? It's a triangle with 3 levels. But we often forget about just the kind of fundamentals. It's almost akin to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You can't have somebody be willing to do something in particular if they put them in charge of redefining processes, improving processes. They can't be willing to do that until they're able, and they can't be able to do that until they know. So going back to the competency, the skills, right, and the buy-in and so forth, it kind of encapsulates a lot of those elements. But think about when you're talking to your folks, do they even know, right? If you ask them, hey, go, figure out a better way to do X, right? Well, where are they in the ability to figure that out? Again, do they even know the full process? Do they know the particulars about that process? Do you have to even do some background discussions and training before they're capable and able to do that? And then, of course, the willing part. One other tool, I love sharing this because it's just so powerful. And this is typically brought into where you're doing change management related to a project because there's something more specific in terms of what the business is trying to achieve and the process that's involved. But I still like sharing this for these overall discussions because it's pretty powerful in that if you can remember just this general curve, not all the particulars, but the general curve, that there's a process to change, right? This has also been related to kind of, the stages of grief, right? There is a process people have to go through. Some are shorter, some are longer, some are deeper, some are shallower, right? But the general process is typically the same. And I won't step through each of these. You can see the labels. This is a really nicely done representation of this. My point in bringing this up is people move through this in different speeds. And so you have to be aware of this, right? Say you bring your team together and team, we're going to innovate. And I want to figure out how we're going to take advantage of AI. Okay, super. Now, assuming you've done some evaluation and you've talked to the team and kind of know where they are relative to embracing change and they get the general concept of why you're even bringing this up, all those fundamental elements. Okay, now we're going to do this. Well, some people are going to move through this faster than others. Some are going to be a little bit more resistant, right? Some are going to rebound a little faster. They're going to be hesitant up front, and then they'll start getting it, and they'll be a great champion for you, right? The idea, again, is people will embrace change and adapt to the change at different paces. And especially if you think about this for a while, right? And you kind of do some research and you talk to Innovia and so forth. And hey, I get what Mark was saying. I'm inspired. I'm driven to a little bit of action. I've talked to Innovia. Hey, I've got some initial ideas. I can see where some of this is going to come into play for us. Fantastic. Time to get the team involved. Well, guess what? You're further down this curve already, right? You've already done the initial processing and how is this maybe going to impact our team and so forth. And so you're going to be further down and it's all cold to them. Well, guess what? They're going to take a while to move through the curve and catch up to you. It's going to take a while and you got to be cognizant of that. So just have this curve in mind for your conversations as you're talking and it's doing assignments and calling your team to act and so forth. Okay. With all of that, again, a lot to digest. I'll leave you with here's some opening questions, just even to sit down with your team and start embracing some of this as a way of just starting to talk. I think that's the most important thing. Lay out what you're trying to achieve with your team, bring them along with you, get them excited that they can craft the future of the importance of finance for your organization. We've touched around this multiple times. How can technology help, right? It can be overwhelming, but my gosh, what an opportunity. And so when you start asking about technology, there's a lot out there. Again, sit down with your Innovia customer representative, start stepping through this with them. I want you to know Microsoft is pouring in millions and millions and millions every year to continue developing their technology to drive businesses forward. It's unbelievable. The amount of development and research that's going on with Microsoft. And so I basically listed out the Microsoft resources off the top of my head here. I didn't even put Azure services. That just popped into my head, let alone everything else that's happening out there in the world. But with Business Central, right, they're continuing to pour so much into each new release. And somehow again, talk with your Innovia rep, somehow try to keep up with all of the improvements that Microsoft is pouring into Business Central. Even just doing that will provide you great leverage and great capabilities, because it really is very impressive what they're doing on a well, monthly basis with the updates, but certainly on a semi-annual basis. Power BI is not slowing down, and all of the power tools associated with it. The capability, again, if you think back to the one slide where we're shifting the finance team to be able to analyze, assess, assimilate data, and be able to report on that and bring all that together for the organization. Power BI is a phenomenal tool for that. Teams, they continue to integrate Teams with all the other Microsoft products and continue to flush out more functionality there as well to enable your teams to collaborate, of course. We certainly touched on AI and Copilot. And then, yes, Continia can help as well. This is what we've been focused on for 30 some years now, is cutting out non-value added activities, driving your business forward, and certainly automating your key business processes. And so did want to highlight, of course, the different solutions that we have available for you. And you may be familiar with one or more of these already, talking with Innovia. We have, I don't know how many dozens of customers with Innovia, so they are very well versed in our solutions and certainly how to install and make the most of them. We have document capture for capturing inbound documents. That typically starts with invoices for an organization, because boy, what a quick ROI you can achieve on that, right? Day one, you're starting to save time. We can capture those invoices, automatically code them, use AI to interpret the information, send it around for review and approval. It's all inside BC. But you can capture any inbound documents. So receipts, confirmations, vendor applications, contracts, anything that you want to reference in BC, we can capture that automatically and store it in there. We have expense management for employee expenses, corporate credit cards. Takes basically a couple clicks to submit an expense. We're trying to make it as quick and simple as possible, because nobody likes dealing with expenses. So we make it incredibly efficient. And again, it's all inside Business Central for you. And we have document output, which is the kind of the flip of document capture. So whatever you want to send out to your key stakeholders, confirmation statements, reminders, etc., they can go out on an automated basis based on triggers inside Business Central, and you can hyper personalize those communications. So it can go to specific people with specific messaging, key data from Business Central. You can even attach documents, overlay your branding standards, etc. An incredible toolkit. Then we have banking that is coming out later this year. And Chris, let me go ahead and let you describe banking and sustainability. You already touched on sustainability a bit, but why don't you go ahead and describe those?
Sure. Yeah. With banking, we try to add the final piece of the puzzle. Mark was describing document capture can take care of incoming invoices, but those invoices need to be paid. And most of our customers and most people in general using Business Central either build a custom banking integration or they write checks, what have you, all kinds of ways how you pay your vendor invoices. We think there is a better way of doing that. We are connecting to more and more banks. If you are part of one of the bigger banks here in North America, the chances are that we can help you a little bit sooner. So feel free to reach out to your Innovia rep and let us know the bank you work with, so we can see if this is something we can offer to you very soon. When it comes to sustainability, yes, we indeed touched upon that a little bit already, but it is our belief that there will be a form of carbon accounting required, and we provide the tools for that. Again, we have built a solution that is currently in trial with a few selected customers, where they can track their carbon accounting and also handle their ESG reporting. As we said, this is something that sooner or later most companies will get exposed to, but for now it is mostly European companies or companies with heavy operations or customers in Europe. But also that is something we definitely want to help you with. And we've seen since the announcement a couple of weeks ago quite a bit of traction here in North America. So if that is something that you struggle with, let us know. We can help you.
Absolutely. Dynamite. Chris, we have a few minutes for a demo. Can you take us through a quick overview of document capture? I think it'd be great for folks to actually see it running inside BC, see some examples of AI and other technologies working to save them non-value add activity.
Perfect. Yeah. And I started sharing. Mark, if you can confirm that you see my screen, it would be good. Yeah, the financial transformation or business transformation, in our belief, it's always easier if there's less friction. People already have so much change that they have to go through. So let's not introduce too many additional systems. This is where our philosophy of build inside comes in handy. Our solution is fully built inside of Business Central. We're not reinventing any existing places to store data and things like that. And of course, it's the interface that people are familiar with to be working in. You see down here some Continia document capture activities. I'm going to show you a little bit of document capture today, handling inbound invoices from vendors. How do those invoices get to your Business Central? Well, simply by email. We can monitor the email address that you in your organization already have for AP, or you create a new one, of course, that's up to you. And we pick up any invoice that comes in to that inbox, and we automatically OCR that document, object character recognition. So we read all the data in there, and then we queue it for an import. So documents get OCR'd, they get imported, and then they get registered. If it is a known vendor and we've defined how we want to deal with that vendor, then it could either go straight into a released status. If you, for example, do purchase orders as well in Business Central and you handle your receiving of goods in Business Central, we can match to the purchase order and or the purchase receipts for that three-way match, and we can automatically send it to a released status for AP to review before final posting. But we also, of course, support invoices that are unrelated to purchase orders. Those typically you want to send through an approval process, and you can follow those along as well. We use Business Central approval workflows, but we've built logic on top of that inside of Business Central. And maybe that's another key point why we think Continia should be part of your digital transformation journey. You can go as fast or as slow as you and or your team can handle. You could choose to only deal with one vendor. You could choose to do this for one department. You could also say, we're not going live until all of our vendors are able to handle this, right? So you really can determine the pace of the financial and the digital transformation that you are going through as an organization and that your team can handle. And we know that all is different based on the other priorities that might be on the plate of the team. If we look at the release status first, these are invoices that completely went through the process. We received them, the file was read, it was turned into a invoice inside of Business Central. It was determined who needs to approve it. We can see it's been approved by Robin and Esther. We see the amounts. If we want to see the details, we can, of course, see that as well right here. If I click on a document, and then you see all the details, including the actual document itself here, what GL account it's going to be booked at. And this is still in a pre-posted status. So I can, as an admin, as an AP clerk, I can make all the changes that I need to make right here before I post it, right? So it gives me full control without all the heavy lifting up front. We typically see in companies that haven't really started the journey into AP automation yet, that documents come in, sometimes they still print them, they go physically to the people throughout the organization, they scribble on a piece of paper what it was for, who approved it, what GL account it needs to be booked at. that comes back to the finance team, and they're doing all that manual data entry, archiving of the paper, keeping track of when the archives need to be moved to the basement, and then from the basement in the future into the paper shredder. All these processes can and are allowed by the governments to be fully digitalized, and allow you to be a lot more efficient. And this is one of those examples. AP just goes into BC on a daily basis, sees what invoices have been processed, looks good to me, and I can just, I think I have to go under home, hit the post button, and post this invoice exactly as you're doing that today inside of Business Central. We'll get into this later on as well. If we take a step back, what happened there? The documents came in, and those documents that you received the first time from a vendor, and you haven't really defined how to deal with that vendor, because of course you can have all the AI in the world, but AI cannot determine what GL account you want to book something at, or if this is one of those vendors where you want to do PO matching. We can do some suggestions based off of that, but we always, the first time around, ask you to validate it. For example, right here, you see no account has been configured for amount excluding tax. We received an invoice from First Stock Consultants. It was able to define who the vendor is. It picked up all the information on the invoice as you can see it that was populated in the VC fields, but we would have to enter what GL account we want to book this $17,500. So you do that once, the system will remember that, but of course, if that changes from time to time, or it is even dependent based on the invoice and based on the approver, then we can include that in the workflows to force, for example, the approvers to update that information. They can be given the permission to update the GL account on the line or on the header, really any information that you would like the approvers to be engaged on. You can force them and or allow them to make some of these changes. Here's an example where it picked up the header information, but not quite yet the line amounts. And it is quite simple to tell the system to deal with that information as well. Each vendor has a template. You see the template numbers are listed here. You can also have multiple templates per vendor, because maybe with one vendor, you have different ways of dealing with their invoices. Some are PO related, some are not PO related. So you can teach the system, if you see this on the document, or if you have this information in BC, then do this, right? So you can train the system to handle multiple scenarios. But the heavy lifting is really done by the system itself. You can see line recognition has been turned off. I can tell it to turn it on, and I want to use the AI tool to figure out what the lines mean for me. I mean, on a simple invoice that the example is right here with 3 lines and 1 page, that's not so complicated. But you can imagine the value this brings if you get a 20-page invoice with a lot of custom information, different PO numbers on the line, things like that. The AI will analyze everything and will suggest what it thinks is all the data and how it interprets it. But of course, you can change that and it will remember that automatically. And really, in general, you can define on the template card how you want to deal with this vendor. Do you want to do matching? And if so, do you want to do that on the line level? Do you allow for a variance? Do we just want to create an invoice, or do we automatically want to submit it for approval? Or are we going to do matching, right? Do we want to match to an order and then create an invoice, or just update the order? All these things can be defined, like I said, per vendor, but they all inherit the base setups from the master. And as part of the implementation that you would go through with the Innovate team, because Innovate has specialists in how to implement our systems, you define with them what kind of like the catch-all is, and from there you can deviate where necessary. Some other fields, I mean, it just shows the deep integration that we have, custom fields, other ISVs that you have installed in your environment that are somehow related to this. For example, the multi-entity management solution from Binary Stream, things like that. We can hook into that natively without customizations because we're built inside of Business Central, so we can immediately leverage the strength of Business Central and that of other ISVs inside of Business Central as well. If I go back now, I made those changes about the line recognition. If I click Recognize Fields, it's going to reanalyze the document, and you can see it picks up the different lines now. And it warns me that it doesn't know what to do with these item numbers. Apparently, these are the item numbers that the vendor uses. We are not familiar with those in this Business Central environment. So I can do the translation of that. And this also shows you that it doesn't have to be items, right? If I want to translate it to a GL, I can do that as well. It just means that next time this vendor charges me for C1908, it's going to always default to that particular GL to put it on. Again, that can be changed by the approvers, that can be changed by the admins. It's just the default that the system is going to fall back to unless somebody else tells it not to. And all these changes and these updates that I make to the template and to the vendor setups and things like that automatically get remembered for next time. So the system gets smarter and smarter as you use it. And like I said before, this also allows you to just slowly transition into full automation. Start with a couple vendors in the beginning. Some of our customers choose one vendor that they do a high volume with. It's already going to save them a ton of time. Others choose a vendor that has a lot of complexity and takes a lot of time of the AP people to do manually. That already could save a lot of time, right? So as I don't even know who said it, but Mark, you had a lot of quotes on the screen. I'm going to put one in too. Is like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And this is also, I think, how we encourage our customers and definitely allow our customers to handle AP automation. Don't see it as a big challenge and major overhaul. Do it step by step, and it will be a lot easier. And as you learn, the system and the team gets better and better at it. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip those steps. I would like to show you our web approval portal. We can see one invoice is out for approval. If I, as an admin, want to see who that is, it's Robin in this case. I can, of course, chase Robin, but Robin will also get email reminders that invoices need to be approved. If I open my approval portal quickly, then I'm now changing personas, right? I am Robin, the approver, and I've gotten an email, and in that email is a link to this portal. I just click on the link and I'm brought to this screen, and I can see right away that this document requires my attention. If I click on it, I can see the exact document as you saw it in Business Central. And now we get to the point that as an approver, I know what we purchased. I know what the purpose of this purchase was, or this service. I can code it. I can help the team coding it. That scribbling that traditionally happens on the piece of paper and then later needs to be entered by the admins, I can do that now digitally and automatically valid, because I can only select values that are available and valid outside of Business Central. This is real-time integrated, so anything that's in this list, Business Central allows me to code to. I have the permission to put this on the sales department. I can be forced to put a certain purchase contract number in. I can change the GL account if I have the permission to do so. You can see I only have access to 2 of them, so you could still limit to what extent an approver can do the coding, and they don't have to go through long lists of information. They can add comments to it. They can attach additional files if you require them to do so. And any of these fields can be locked or made mandatory for approvers to interact with, right? Now, if I approve this document, then that's it. That's all I have to do as an approver. And when we go back into BC and I refresh the screen right here real quick, then you'll see that down here, we now have no invoices for approval anymore, and this document moved up a stage into the released status. And this is, again, where the approver, or sorry, the admin would interact with it. It's been fully approved. I have all the information. I could hit post or post batch and stuff like that, right? So this is kind of like how invoices come through the system and how you process them. One last quick thing I want to show you is we allow for very flexible search of documents. So once it's been archived, and of course we encourage you not to always print these documents, but you may from time to time for an audit or just internally somebody's requesting some historical information, they can access that, the approvers can access that through the web approval portal as well. But if you need to look something up and you know, for example, a serial number or a certain purchase you did and the warranty is necessary for a claim. That is not data you typically capture in BC off the invoice, right? A serial number or something like that. You can search for anything in the document and have the document pull up. I'm going to search for the zip code here quickly. I think if I remember, it was 31772. And you can see it pulls up all the documents that have that zip code on there. That is not data that I captured as part of the invoice. Of course, it's known on the vendor card, but not something that was captured on the actual invoice. But we pull it up because we index and make it possible to search through all the data that's been captured as part of the OCR. I can go straight to the document card. I can show the file that we got from the vendor, the email that it came in with, but I can also find the entries. So when I do that, we can hook into the native find entries functionality from BC. And we go, in this case, to the purchase invoice, where also here, where was it? Blanking now where in the menu. Sometimes it's so overwhelming to see where all that information can be found. But you would be able to see what ledger entries it hooks into, what tax entries are related to this invoice. So it allows you to very quickly navigate to all the different ways that these documents hook into each other and into transactions. And with a couple minutes to spare for any possible questions, I'll stop demoing here.
I'm glad you got to the document search, Chris, because I think that is one of those real hidden costs for an organization, for the finance team. The time that they spend answering questions and looking up history like that doesn't need to be that way for sure. I answered a couple questions in the chat here. Any other questions? Go ahead and drop those in, please. Or, of course, you can follow up with Innovate, and we can answer those separately. Angie, after the webinar, I will send over the slides so you can share it out with the group.
Sounds good.
Right, I see somebody typing. And of course, if you want to arrange a specific demo, document capture, or any of our other solutions, let your Innovate customer representative know. They'll be happy to set that up. And we look forward to talking with you, of course. I thought I saw a question coming in. I don't see it now. All right. Well, since we're at the top of the hour, I guess we'll go ahead and call it good. Again, hopefully that was inspiring, exciting, a little anxiety producing for you. But again, hopefully you see some great opportunities. And again, talk to your customer representative at Innovate for next steps. And I'm sure they've got a wealth of ideas for you as well, how to brace this potential for transformation. So everyone, thank you very much. Chris, appreciate the help.
Of course. Have a great day, everybody.
Everybody take care. We'll look forward to seeing you in Denver.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mark and Chris, and we will see you in a couple of weeks. And those that are on the webinar, hopefully we will be seeing some of you out in Denver in a couple of weeks. So like I mentioned, we will be putting this on the website for you to review and share with anyone, and I'll send you all the recording. And until next time, have a great day, and we will see you soon. Thanks, everyone.